Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning from wherever you are listening to this live session and this fantastic session inside the International Dental Genetics and Clinical Diagnostics Chapter 2 conference. Well, if you are here, you can give us your shots of inspiration through some messages. And now I present to you a very, very interesting session by Dr. Satvik Meridu, who will be telling you about research career after BDS, challenges and solution. So we will know more about Dr. Swatik, and let me see if he's here at the backstage. And Dr. Swatik, at presently, he is a postdoctoral fellow at Rutgers in New Jersey Medical School, USA. Okay, so I have Swatik with me. Hello, Dr. Swatik, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Gagi.
Thank
Uh,
you for being here, and we are all eagerly waiting for this fantastic session. And I will not take any more time, and the stage is all yours.
okay, first of all, I would like to thank you and your team for organizing such an event and inviting me. And as Garki mentioned, I'm gonna give few insights like challenges I faced and maybe some of the tips I felt might be interesting and might help you in your career advice. So to start with, I would like to introduce myself, providing my timeline of career path. So initially, when I was like way younger, I had a great passion towards science. Basically, at 12th grade, I was like highly motivated towards genetics. The Mendelian genetics topic like really moved, and then I thought like, why can't I pursue a career in genetics? But however, due to the social and the peer pressure thing, we are left with either medicine or engineering in India at that point. And I had a gap year because I couldn't secure a dental admit right away. And during the gap year, I was aiming for my board exam for dental admit. And however, in 2007, I was able to secure a dental admit. And it took me 5 years to complete the BDS training. And during that training, my research urge never went back. And I came across stem cells, which was like highly motivating and made me think, oh, we can like literally regenerate a tooth if stem cells are being maintained well. Was one of the fascinating idea. And during the dental journey, I had been exposed to various conferences where one of the speaker really motivated that less than point not 5% of research is done in dentistry. So maybe I thought like, why can't I be included in that minimal percentage? And before jumping directly into the research career, I first got a small research volunteership at CCMB, which is Cellular and Molecular Biology, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, located at Hyderabad. It is one of the prestigious institutes in Asia, I would say. And I feel the techniques or the instruments available back in 2013 were very like can be comparable to what I see it here. Means it really has a great infrastructure there. And because of lack of proper guidance, I had almost like 2 years of gap year because I could do only 3 months of volunteership at CCMB. So the rest of the time was in preparing for my like applications and all. And I directly thought like, can I jump in to PhD? The answers I got was no. Like it means my applications, everything were rejected. Then I thought like maybe I have to do masters, gain more experience, and then followed by a PhD. And finally, I got an admit in masters at Rutgers in 2014, followed by PhD in 2016. And it took like 6.5 years for me to graduate with my PhD. Yeah, I do understand that COVID did took an year, but still it's minimum of 6 years were taken for PhD. And during this tenure, I came in with an initial urge for stem cells. Therefore, I did a concentration of stem cells during my master's. But however, over the time, I got matured enough thinking that maybe stem cells is more like an application and maybe I have to focus on basic science research. That's when I focused on mitochondrial biology in cardiovascular research. And now I'm currently pursuing my postdoctoral research where I'm studying the metabolomics in the field of cardiovascular research during stress conditions. So, this is going to be my brief intro where I have gone through multiple ups and downs, and here I am today. Yeah, definitely research is a tough choice, I would say. And to start my presentation with, my first question is, can research be an alternative career? Why I came up with this question is most of the students who approach me, they ask like, yeah, can I think of doing research? Is it gonna be like financially stable? Can I be having a better job? The straight answer for this is research is never going to be an alternative career. Unless until you're doing it by choice, I won't suggest you to do it. Because, for example, dentistry was, I got an admit, therefore I did dentistry. But research, that's by choice, which I did. So it's never going to be an alternative career for anyone unless until it's just by a chance for someone. Why I say it is because the research, it's very very less rewarding. Like financially the pays you get is very low unless until you reach the top situations, and the progress is going to be like several years, I would say. For example, behind a basic science research article, it can take from 2 years to 3 years. For example, my work, which I did a small amount of work during my masters during 2014 to 2016, it got finally published in 2017. And it's not my first author, where my authorship is somewhere in between like fourth or fifth position. And research is also like the medical facility where it's a lifelong learning process where you have to keep knowing everything at every point. Like for example, you want to write a grant, you need to know what the field is and currently where the research is being, and what are the current gaps in the research and how you're going to address it. So there are a lot of questions that keeps you like you need like a software update which comes in every week, right? Similarly, research is like something like that, where if you don't try to update yourself, you are held back. And other thing is a lot of patience. Patience in the sense, yes, being a clinical graduate, yeah, we do attain a lot of patience because we deal with little tough situations where we have to deal slowly and deal the cases or the patients. So that's how you get trained in clinical setup in order to like handle the patients in a pretty well mannered. But however, in research, it's a different level of patience you need. And I can state it is, for example, you received a positive result for your experiment. You have to confirm it 3 to 4 times in order to make sure that that is like a true positive and not a false positive. Simultaneously, if you got negative result, and you have to repeat it 3 to 4 times in order to make sure the result is going to be consistent. Because in research, the data should be replicable not only by you, but anyone else in the world should be able to replicate it. For example, you have published a paper. The paper should be replicated by somebody else who have followed your protocol in a similar manner. So it requires really a lot of patience and dedication. So that was the reason why I said research can never be an alternative career. And for I wanted to ask everyone like what is research? And personally I feel research is more like a critical update that is needed and without which there is no survival. And a small example is I think COVID has really taught everyone the importance of research. Maybe without the vaccines there is no like without the vaccine there is not going to be much of a cure. I won't say it is like 100% mandatory, but without that, yes. And without any studies stating that these drugs are going to be beneficial or not, it's not going to be helpful. And I would like to even thank all the data analysts that helped out in piling up. And data analyst, even though that is an analytical job, but still it is part of research. So there are multiple components in research. It's not just one or other way. For example, saliva was at one point used as a diagnostic tool for even for COVID virus. So in order to develop a kit, it is not just by one person. There is going to be a multiple team, and if you have to connect it with the software, then you need even the software professional. So there are multiple points of research. I'm not just talking about basic science. It is going to be in each and every stream that research is more like a critical update. And without that, it's going to be like I would say, like if there is no proper research, then the existence is going to be in critical stage. Because if you don't have the proper update in research, then you're not going to able to counteract the disease progression with the new outbursts that are happening. And before jumping in, I wanted to say that should I do a PhD is the first question. Like, what are the factors that decide whether you have to do a PhD, or what kind of a career do you have to pursue in your research background thing. So in a career path, you have to have like short term as well as long term goals. So what do you mean by a short term, and what do you mean by a long term goal? Short term goal is like which you aim in few years ahead, like 2 to 3 years from now. And long term goal is like how many short term goals are needed to reach out to the final goal. For example, my aim is to become an academic researcher in like 5 years from now. That is going to be my long term goal. And how am I going to reach it? I have to get trained as a postdoc initially, write some fellowships, gain experience in writing grants, and then in 3 years of time gain sufficient experience so that I can start writing independent grants. And that's how you can become an academic researcher. So these are my short-term goals, where I'm going to reach to my long-term goal, being an academic researcher. So now I want to give you an insight, like how to decide whether I should do just masters or do masters followed by a PhD. So when you have to think, you have to choose masters. I'm going to give few factors which where you can think. As I mentioned, when your short-term goal is to gain just a pharmaceutical job where you want to earn a decent salary and like right after your masters and get along with it. So, and the factors in which kind of masters you want to do is based on your interest. So think which is highly motivating, or which field of research is highly motivating to you. Then during the master's program, try to gain like pharmaceutical experience by doing some kind of internships where you can like have some career events where the pharma companies come over and like pick you out for internships. And at that point you have to develop pretty good like contacts, which is an essential factor called as networking, in order to finally land in a job after your masters. So these are the things that needs to be done. And for example, you just want to land you don't have a specific interest, then you have to think which is the most like a hot field in the hot field in research right now. I would say, for example, the infectious diseases. It can always be a hot field because there are diseases that are emerging every now and then. And other thing right now is immunology, because immunology is playing a crucial role at this point. Apart from these all professions, big data, which is also called as data analysis, bioinformatics, or health informatics, there are different terms and different fields. So it is like, for example, if I have to write a grant, I need RNA-seq analysis, which is like bunch of statistical analysis that is done in an entire genome that is being tested. So, and in order to see such kind of a differences, you need big data analysis. And this is bioinformatics is right now. So you have to decide like which kind of a field has higher job opportunities. So, and which companies are providing internships. So these are all the background work you have to be doing it in order to move ahead. So that is the reason I would say is, if your short term goal is just to do an industry job or some kind of a job, then just stick with masters. I won't suggest you to do a PhD just for a job. You can do it if you're highly passionate and you want to develop your own set of theme, which is going to take several years. But still, PhD is like the utmost degree, where I'm going to state you like what a PhD is soon. So think about it. If you just want to have a basic job, then masters should be sufficient. But if you want to go higher, maybe then PhD is required. So now coming up to why you have to do a PhD. PhD is one of the highest degree that is being earned in a specific field of study. For example, I earned a PhD in biomedical sciences. But however, I my research work focuses on like mitochondrial biology and Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and where I'm studying like calcium regulation in mitochondria during dysregulated cardiac myopathy and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So it is going to be more focused. And because this study is completely a new data set that I have generated, the world acknowledges it based on once it gets published in the online. So this is how PhD is being more noble compared to any other profession. Like profession in the sense any other degree, because every profession PhD is the only highest degree that can be attained. And because it is the only degree where you generate a new set of knowledge to the entire world, and the world thinks that is essential maybe for somebody else mechanism of study which will promote their own research path. So, what it requires to do a PhD, you need a really strong motivation and dedication and patience. Yeah, I did mention earlier the amount of patience required. And because I am a dental graduate, personally, my point of view, I would say, is if you want to do the same BDS twice, that is the amount of patience you need for doing a PhD. Initially I thought like, okay, I have done BDS, I attained the patients during my clinical rotations and stuff. I have dealt with patients, and I also know differential diagnosis. So differential diagnosis, I can compare that to troubleshooting in research, where you are able to find out where the faults could be. So that helps you, but still the amount of patience needed is almost like studying BDS twice. And PhD is not just learning techniques, but you have to understand the application of where you can apply these kind of techniques in order to develop a new project. So uh, one of my former mentor, she stated that if you want to survive in research, just having an idea doesn't get you success. You have to able to explain your idea in the best possible way, so that you can get good funding, so that you can work on your project and produce something which is useful for the public. And later on, I did say you earlier, like you have to do masters then do PhD. Yeah, that was the thing for me because I didn't have proper experience. But can a PhD be done right after undergrad? The straight answer is yes, you can do it. So what it requires for doing a PhD right after undergrad: increase the research experience. If I say research experience, gain the research experience in the field of your interest. For example, if you want to do something in epidemiology, then try to gain experience during public health posting, where you can write some surveys or where you can do some epidemiological studies during your dental graduate thing. If you want to do something like basic science like me, then you have to focus more on basic science research, where you learn some kind of cell culture techniques, qPCR, molecular biology, biochemistry, something like this. This might not be available in most of the dental schools, but I am going to soon state you how you can gain such kind of experience. And the main important criteria is to have some co-authored research publications. So why is it important? I can give you a small insight on this, because I learned it from my former PhD mentor. I did ask him like, how do you assess the PhD applications? So he said that, for example, if a student has a co-authored publication where his name is in the middle or somewhere not rather than the first or the second author, it means that they have done a technical aspect of the paper, and that's why they got an authorship. So it means that they know a specific technique. So that itself states that maybe that guy has experience in something rather than nothing. For example, if the student or applicant has a first author publication, it means that he has been done more than 50% of the work needed for the publication, and that's how it helps in understanding or delineating the difference based on just the publications. And apart from that, have you done any projects in order to know that yes, the candidate has the right potential to survive for 4 or 5 years from now doing a PhD, as he has already understood the ups and downs in the research career. So these are the things the professor or the PI looks in selecting an candidate. So now I'm going to show you how you can gain some experience during your undergrad. So there are some programs, international programs, where you can come over to abroad and do some kind of research internship, as well as you are able to even do some kind of projects in association with ICMR, which is one of the biggest government body India has. But the thing is, you will be eligible to do such programs only during your undergraduate program career. You can't do it once you come out, because during when you are a student, the eligibilities are way higher compared to after you have the sorry about that, after like, or the opportunities you have after you graduate. For example, CCMB, the one I said you earlier, it has its own training programs where it gives you like summer training internships, which are like 3 to 6 months, and you can also go for a project if needed. But and you can see it is even eligible for MBBS and BDS students in any year of their study can apply. So definitely it would bring you a better exposure. You can first test yourself whether you will be able to pursue a research career or not, and you will understand, because most of the students, dental students, they won't get a proper exposure in research. So I'm mainly focusing this seminar on basic science because I'm a basic science researcher. But similarly, you can look for such opportunities where material science, if you are interested in dental materials, you can look for a broader aspect like material science. Or for example, you're interested in more a different field like bioinformatics, look for programs or institutes where bioinformatics is on a better like is being a better learning stage. So you have to individualize yourself based on your field of research. And this is so there are multiple CSIR institutes like CCMB, where I can even state one more institute, that is IISC, which is in Bangalore, which is a prestigious institute, Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Even IISC has some programs. Why I am stating about these is I got to know these programs after I graduate BDS, and it took me really hard to get into such programs. Because if you're in an undergrad school, it is easy for doing some, yeah, definitely there is a drawback. You might be graduating little late than your fellow mates, but you might get to know whether you will be able to pursue research. Are you a better fit in research or not? And coming to another program called Kurana program, which is where you can come abroad. So it is more like a Indo-US project where people from India who are currently students can go for like a 2 to 3 month program where you will be paid stipend, and you will be able to do a project abroad, and you will get to know the best update in the science. So if you see the disciplinary areas, computational science, which I mentioned earlier, which is also called as big data, machine learning, you can also do basic science, or else material science, any kind of research. So there are programs. The only thing is maybe we have to look forward, and the program supports your round trip airfare and also provides you stipend where you can cover your living expenses. So you get the best experience and everything is being paid. Yeah, it definitely requires some kind of experience, prior experience, and show the right motivation so that you get into such programs. So there are n number of programs. Only thing is maybe we have to like sit and look into them. And that's how you can directly do a PhD right after your undergrad. And maybe you can save like 3 to 4 years, which I wasted. For example, you can save the gap years after your BDS because you don't know what to do. And 2 years after that is the master's program where you have to do a master's thesis. So most of the things can get waived if you spend like an extra year during your undergrad and gain more experience and see that whether you can do research. And coming to the next thing, how to decide what university you want to work on. So first thing, as I mentioned earlier, focus on the field of interest. So the based on the field of interest, you have to highly categorize yourself. uh, okay, let me do this kind of a research. So this is mainly based on for PhD admit. And the universities, you have to then shortlist the universities which have such kind of a programs, then categorize them into top, medium, and low schools. Why I said top, medium, and low schools is top schools are little hard to get in, medium schools should be little easy, and low schools are your shoe shot entries. So if you categorize all three, maybe you might not lose your admit in the first shot. If you have scored pretty good in your GRE and other requirements, then you might get into the top schools. But if you're a little bit onto the borderline, then maybe uh, thinking of the other things will get into consideration. And if you have some experience, even that might sometimes play a role. So therefore, having applications in all the three categories might get you a better admit. And next, coming to look for at least 2 to 3 professors which are working on your related field of interest. If there is only like one person in that field which you are interested in, for example, excuse me, you wanted to work on maybe OSMF, oral submucous fibrosis. There might be only one professor who is working in pretty good university which you are interested in, something like an amazing, or maybe Rutgers Dental School. And the chances of you getting into the same lab might be less. You don't know whether he has already funding, or you don't even know that whether he has like taken a student just before you checked with him, or it depends on multiple things. So therefore it is important to make sure that you in choosing an university, make sure that you have at least 2 to 3 professors working on the related field. Therefore it you need not choose an alternative field because you don't have a professor of interest. So next, coming into how to know whether these 2 to 3 professors have funding or not. For example, in US, the federal funded labs can be checked using the NIH reporter website, where you can just type in the professor's name and you'll be able to get to know his previous and current fundings. The only issue is you can see only federal funding in this public domain. You might not be having access to the private funding where he gets some foundation grants, or internal university funding cannot be found. But how can you assess if the lab is pretty active or not? I would suggest is NIH, which is an publication database where you search in the professor's name and then look for the number of articles he published as a corresponding author. Why I mentioned corresponding author is it is very important uh, for the professor to be corresponding author, means the research is from his lab. If the research is not from his lab, if he is more like collaboration, his name will be slightly before the corresponding author. So if you are focusing on how active his lab research is, you have to focus on the corresponding author papers. And if the lab has like 2 to 3 papers, it is like pretty big lab. It is like they have good publication record for past few years, and they have some active funding, or they are in the process of submitting more grants. So it is always important to have to get to know how much funding a lab has before even choosing a lab. So today I have dealt you multiple things. One thing, why research is important, and whether you have to do a master's or you have to do, your long term goal is to do a PhD. What if PhD is your long term, and how to get through it? And what are the important or essential components that are required in order to do this? So coming to the end stage, I have seen, or I have come across a lot of young dental grads who wanted to connect with me over LinkedIn. So I wanted to give a brief overview on, like, how to send in a LinkedIn request to a new or a stranger. So I'm sharing my current profile. Maybe I can share a professor's name. For example, Dr. Sadushima Junichi, he's actually chair of my department, whom I know in person, but I don't. But being he is the chair of my department, I have to send him an official request. So once I hit connect, then you get an option called add a note here. Once, for example, I clicked a connect, so then add a note. So this is when I type in hi doctor, or like dear Dr. Sadoshima. So because I know him in person, I need not give a multiple a complete update about me. I can just say like this is Satvik. I would like to add you to my LinkedIn network. Kindly consider my request. This is how something I would do if I know the person in particular. If I don't know the person in particular, I would prefer you to give a brief intro about yourself. Like, I'm a postdoctoral researcher in Rutgers lab, and I would like to uh, this is my long term goal, and I felt like maybe connecting with you, I might get some guidance. So just state them so that the uh, you break the silence between the person. It's more like a silence breaker, and you're politely approaching them in stating them, because many might send in a LinkedIn request and they don't have a proper profile page, profile photo, and they don't have a proper educational college or university affiliated, and they don't update anything. Then I feel like, why should I even, is it a fake profile? So these are a lot of the things that needs to be considered. That is the reason I felt like, because I'm assuming most of the young people who are being joining might at least get some useful insight, like how to send in an official LinkedIn request. So just by sending a request, yeah, definitely I do know that you want to connect, and they take like 2 to 3 days to then message me stating, hi, Dr. Satvik, I'm so and so. So when you're trying to introduce 3 days later, why can't you do it when sending your request? So this is how I would send it, and it would help. So at this point, I would like to thank you everyone for for patiently listening. I would like to thank Dr. Gargi and her team for providing or inviting me as a speaker today. And I would like to thank scientists. I would specifically thank science and scientists, because without them, we are not going to be surviving today, I would say. So I would like everyone also to thank science and scientists from today, so that it would help for a better future. And here I would like to go for the Q&A.
Thank you, Swatik. It was a fantastic session, and I think the young people and aspiring people have got a lot of insights, particularly the courses you mentioned and how they can, if they're really wanting to do a transition towards research, then I think this session would be a step-by-step guide. Well, as of now, we don't see any specific questions in the comments, but then I would like to ask you one question. Uh, like as you know that dentistry in particular is a very technique based, it's a professional course. So you had an inclination yourself from within towards research. uh, is there any tips which you can tell to people where they can think this as an option? Because what I understand, that it is not always by choice. Sometimes people get lost in confusion, so they land up on something which they are really not interested after doing BDS, like they go and join call center. I have seen people like this, which I feel is pathetic. So is there any tips that you can share that way, which will help to decide, or maybe lessen the confusion, if I just put it that way?
I do understand like what you wanted to state. For example, the reason I chose research is not because I have an aversion towards clinics. I was good at clinics. I did mention it during in my timeline, but I wanted to state it's not like I don't like clinics. I have done pretty good at clinics. I was good at preparing a denture, preparing occlusal rims. I had my own hand skill. I would state it in that way. I would be able to even deal the pediatric patients and everything. But here comes is I did mention you that one particular conference when a professor said it the amount of people that are in research is like less than 0.05%. That motivated me, and I'm a person where I want to be in the lesser lot and make a difference. So that was the driving factor for me. And apart from that, the underlying urge for research, like you want to constantly have, for example, I don't know how many of I think maybe you are aware of it. For example, when there is a lecture going on, have you ever raised your hand for asking a question, or were you hesitant?
I have
Definitely.
been a student who I have been that kind of a student very much. But yes, you
So
rightly pointed that is very less. That is
very
very
less.
less.
So most of the students do have the questions, but they don't answer thinking, don't question thinking that maybe that's a silly question. So if you have an internal urge to have like constant questions, why is this happening, how is this happening, or what could be the potential source for this happening, and how can you avoid it, or something like this kind of a constant thinking process is there, you have an interest in research, I would say. It could be in any field that you have to figure it out. If you don't have the curiosity of like thinking ahead, maybe research might not be, it's going to be like a regular job for you. For me, research is going to be, for example, last night I worked till 11 o'clock, but the experiment haven't gone great, but still I'll be working on that irrespective of the like whether it's, so I'm not based on my outcome. I have to give 100% and just wait for my outcome. If it is not positive or if it didn't work, then I have to think about, because this kind of curiosity is needed in order to troubleshoot where something has gone wrong. So as I mentioned, if you have tons of patients constantly waiting, for example cloning, for example you have to clone some kind of a gene into a vector. At times it happens in like weeks, at times it can take several months to a year, because there might be a tiny mistake, but you still have to have that kind of a patience needed, therefore it will help. uh, I
I
think there
think
is
we
a
have,
question, I guess, right? Any
we have a
specific
question.
suggestion regarding
Yeah.
pathology research? See, pathology research, it's a broader aspect. Like what kind of specific disease are you working on? As I mentioned, OSMF. So I have a personal interest on OSMF because I'm a dentist and I know how much amount of research that is being done. And I can strongly state in India, Erica nut is the highest abused substance, even compared to tobacco, I would say. Because there are many non smokers, but still they chew Erica nut. And there are smokers also who chew Erica nut. And Erica nut is known to cause a lot of diseases. Personally, that is one of my long term goal is to study OSMF. Even though I'm right now focusing on cardiac research, my long term goal is to connect oral biology, because that's where I want to give back to the dental fraternity. And that kind of a link is important, and that is the reason I have focused on a diverse field where I can get back to oral biology in a short prospect. And as coming to the question, so you have to first delineate what kind of disease you are interested in. And once the disease is done, maybe look for the labs. If you want to focus only in India, then look for the labs which are working on this particular issue. And if some professor is highly, like, you are driven by research of one particular person, maybe you have to reach out to him either by an email asking, are there any positions, are you taking any PhD students, do you have any funding? And as I mentioned, you can check his research publications either on the website, or you can go for public databases. Like I think Scopus is highly used in India, and like how I'm using NIH in US. So you can look for those specific things, and based on then look for the universities, do they provide stipend for PhD, or, and simultaneously you have to do your own homework, how I can get my own funding staying in the lab. For example, the professor doesn't have lot of funding to pay you, but he has a research grant where he already has funding to continue the project, then that's a good opportunity. If the lab doesn't have funding, maybe I won't suggest you to choose it, because even if you get some other fellowship from outside, like from the CSIR or DBT or any of the national boards, still you need money to do the research project. So that's how things I would suggest would be important. And to give you how diverse a student can go, I know an MDS grad who is right now a software engineer. So I felt like people like these should be providing their stories, so that it would be helpful for them. Because see, for me, computer, I never had an aversion to it. I can learn computer, like computer languages, because right from my schooling I had access to it. So it was part and parcel of my career. So it is not too hard for me, like I can even now jump in. And US is a place where you can have the diverse profiles. My aim is to come back to India also to establish such kind of a career, because I came across some dental grads who have done biomedical sciences in India but are finding it hard to survive, because not everyone accepts diverse profiles. Oh, they might think like maybe he doesn't have proper insights on what he want to do. No, that's not the case. See, here we are in a system where we are trained in a single direction, but after a certain point of time you get to know that maybe this is not my right field I am working in. I don't have the proper satisfaction. Maybe you feel like changing your field. Changing, that is at least that you have a proper thought process, I would say. The others are just struggling in the same line, dealing the things. I'm not demeaning someone, but I'm trying to state is having a diverse profile is good in one aspect. For example, now I have done cardiac research. My goal is to see how, so they always say, right, oral health is a mirror of systemic health. So I want to connect that, how oral health can affect cardiac health in long term. That's one of my goal which I want to put. So for example, a cardiologist or cardiac researcher might not have a complete aspect on oral biology. Likewise, the same, an oral biologist can't have a complete perspective about a cardiologist, like cardiac view. So I want to be somewhere in between, bridging the gap and developing a new research project which might advance the bridge, so that it will be helpful both for the cardiologist as well as the oral biologist, so that they get to know, okay, there is a new mechanism. So in research, it is not always that finding a drug is research. Finding a mechanism also is research, which might take several decades. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Maybe having first finding out the research field, like, or specific disease. Maybe if you're interested in like leukoplegia, look for the professors who are working, because research is more on focused field of study. It is not like a generalized thing. Maybe, for example, if you are already found a research study or a research group, then think about the programs. The programs are more broader. For example, even though I did cardiovascular research, the name of my program is biomedical sciences. So it's more like an umbrella program. So there is a like uh, a difference. So when you're deciding a field, maybe it should be more focused. When you're doing a master's, then you can try multiple. For example, I have done 3 rotations during my master's. My first rotation was working on yeast, where he works on daughter yeast cells and the mother yeast cells. So the next rotation I worked with induced pluripotent stem cells, where they were being differentiating induced pluripotent stem cells to cardiac myocytes. And the third lab, it was on mouse heart, where they were doing ischemia reperfusion kind of surgeries, and then studying how detrimental or beneficial knocking down a specific gene is. So at master's level, I was like, maybe I have to think of which kind of research I'll be more motivated in. So that's when you can try. But already, if you are in a PhD, maybe then you have to stream down which like, are you going to focus on infectious diseases, are you going to focus on immunology, are you going to focus on cell biology or molecular biology. Once you figure out the field, then you can look for specific research topics and see which is more like getting you interested or driving you, which kind of research is driving you. Maybe that would help, I would say.
Thank you, Swatvik, for that wonderful and extensive answer. And thank you, Surya Vamshi, for your question. So I think for your question, we also got to learn a lot of more insights from Swatvik. And so I think it was wonderful here with your session, Swatvik, and we look forward to for more interactions in future with you once again. Thank you so much for your time and for being here on the International Dental Genetics and Clinical Diagnostics Conference, Chapter 2.
Thank you.